Yeah, you can also record in the cloud.
Hello, it is Jeffrey Flack and beautiful people, and I have the honor today of introducing a very talented man that's been through some challenges. His name is Frank King. Today we're going to hopefully discover everything about Frank. Frank is a 5-time TEDx speaker. He is a TEDx speaker coach. He is a motivational speaker. He is a leadership speaker. He is an author of Amazon bestseller. It's called Guts, Grit, and the Grind. He's also written Do a Day. He helps people with suicide prevention. Frank did not have an easy childhood. We're going to start today from the childhood and take you up to right where he's at today. And full disclosure, Frank has actually, he's helping me trying to get on TEDx. So I'm going to get on TEDx.
And that's a hill to climb there, brothers and sisters. I'm telling you.
That is absolutely. So Frank, let's start from your childhood. What was it like growing up in your family?
So you want me to start with the bad touches? Is that what you're telling me?
I do. Well, I also know that you suffer, this is, ironically enough, this is mental illness month, awareness. Yeah. And you suffer from chronic depression and
actually major depressive disorder, depression, and chronic suicidal ideation.
What is that?
It's a little rare. It's means that for people, for me and people like me, people in my tribe, the option of suicide is always on the menu as a solution for problems large and small. And the story I tell about how small the problem can be is that a couple of years ago, my car broke down. I had 3 thoughts unbidden: get it fixed, buy a new one, or I could just kill myself. That's chronic suicidal ideation. Mm-hmm. And almost every time I speak, except once, there's been somebody in the audience who had that condition, didn't know it had a name, thought they were just some kind of freak because of the way their brain worked, or didn't. And the relief to find out they're not, in fact, alone is palpable. It's a young woman came up to me after a college presentation, said, "Thank you for your keynote." I said, "You're welcome." She goes, "But I got to tell you, it made me weep." "Well, how did it make you weep?" She said, "Well, you know your story about the car, get it fixed, buy a new one, or I could just kill myself." She goes, "I've been having those thoughts my entire life. I did not know it had a name. I thought I was just some kind of freak. And when I heard you say that out loud, I realized for the first time in my life that I am not, in fact, alone, and I wept."
Right.
So that's my purpose and my passion. That's my why.
That's your why, Simon Sinek. But let's go back to
childhood.
Your childhood. Let's tell the audience the things that you've witnessed. I'm sure people can connect, things that they can connect with you, things that they've probably seen in their family. Obviously not the normies is what you call them.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those either. So
yeah, the neurotypical neuronormal. Well, a relatively good childhood, although my father had a heart condition, which I inherited, bicuspid aortic valve. He died at the age of 40. I was 8 years old. It was my birthday and Thanksgiving, by the way. And which I found out very quickly, the wishbone thing didn't work because he didn't come back. Yeah, I know. That's my family. Dark humor. I told my first joke in 4th grade. My entire family is very nearsighted. Myopic, I guess is the word, myopic. Uh-huh. And I didn't want to wear my glasses because I was terribly vain, still am. And back in the day, back in the 60s, when I was going to elementary school, there weren't there were no fashion frames. I mean, girls had cat eye glasses, a couple of colors. Guys had the black Ray-Ban plastic, well, very popular now, but Buddy Holly kind of glasses. And so my teacher knew that I needed them, but wasn't wearing them. So she decided to bring me to the front of the room and sort of desensitize the entire class to my glasses, pull the Band-Aid off. And so she got me to the front of the room, turned me away from the class, put my glasses on me, turned me back to the room, and looked down and said, "See, you look intelligent." And this is the first joke I ever told. I looked up at her and said, "Yes, that would explain all the laughter." And she was hysterical. She had to excuse herself, go to the teacher's lounge. She was laughing so hard. So that was, and I realized at that point that I was going to be a stand-up comedian. And then fast forward to 12th grade, I'd taken 3 years of drama, never gotten a good part, always in the chorus, never a line. And I began to see a pattern. And so I thought to myself, if I do stand-up, I can write, direct, produce, and star in my own little show every night. So just by chance, second semester, senior year, there's a talent show, 1975. Nobody had ever done stand-up before. Mostly it was folk dancers and accordion players, that kind of thing. And so I won. And I went home and told my mama, I'm going to be a comedian. And she said, because education's a big deal for her, oh, no, son, you're going to college first. I don't care what you do when you get done. You can be a goat herder for all I care, but you're going to be a goat herder with a college degree.
And you went to the first college that was ever in the United States.
The University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill.
There you go.
Yeah, go Tar Heels. And so I went, got a couple of degrees. I got a degree in political science and one in labor management relations. And I should have stayed and gone to summer school because 2 more courses I have a degree in economics. But anyway, I got out of college. I married my high school and college sweetheart. Yeah, big mistake. We had nothing in common, but you know what they say, opposites attract. She was pregnant, I wasn't. So I know. And we moved to California, and I went to work for her father's insurance company because that's what she wanted me to do.
That sounds fun. How was that?
It was a sleigh ride through hell. And yeah. And she's a wonderful woman, but we really didn't belong together, truly. And insurance is a great business, but I felt like I was walking around somebody else's life. Not an uncommon feeling for a lot of people, by the way. I have come to find out.
Because it's true.
Yeah. And being depressed and suicidal, I realized that if I didn't change something, if I didn't start doing comedy, open mic nights, I was going to kill myself, literally commit suicide, die by suicide. My second thought was, well, wait a minute, what do I got to lose? I could divorce my wife, quit my job in insurance, try comedy. If it works, great. If it doesn't, shoot, I can always die by suicide. So that's how I got into comedy. That's why my fourth TEDx talk is called "Suicide: The Secret of My Success." Dead man talking.
Yes.
And
can you expand on that TED talk a little bit? Because there's some poignant times in your life when you were a young boy and your mother witnessed the suicide.
Oh Lord, yes.
You witnessed the suicide
at age 4.
Firsthand.
Yes. Yeah. It runs in my family. It's called generational depression and suicide. I've got a friend who's a therapist, has a client, and it goes back 5 generations. So I don't know how far it goes back in my family, but my grandmother died by suicide. My mother found her. My great aunt died by suicide. My mother and I found her. My mom couldn't reach my great aunt on the phone, got worried because she had a similar situation with her mother. And so she bundled me in the car at 4 years old. We drove over to my great aunt's apartment, let ourselves in, and nothing was out of place except all the food that should have been in the old lock type refrigerator was on the counter: butter, eggs, milk, cheese. My mother didn't realize what had happened. What had happened was my great aunt had crawled inside the refrigerator. And there's an old lock type. So once you're inside, there's no getting out.
No out.
Well, she had crawled in, and then she had changed her mind and tried to claw her way out. So when my mother opened the refrigerator door, me holding on to her skirt tail, my great aunt fell out of the refrigerator and pinned me to the floor. We're face to face on the floor, her face frozen, that last moment of terror, nails broken and bloody. And I screamed for days. My mother prayed. She said, look, I'll give up 10 years of my life if he can just forget it. And I did. It walled off in my brain. And the family, as many families did of that generation, created a myth that if I ever asked about it, I was to be told that when my mother opened the refrigerator door, my great aunt was sitting there serenely with her hands folded in prayer. And in 2012, I mentioned that story to my cousin who's 10 years older. And he goes, what? Folded in prayer, serene, my behind, the old bat fell out on you. And it all came rushing back. Whatever wall I've been holding it,
Oh my goodness.
yeah. And the thing is Jeffrey, is that if you're already hardwired for suicide and you end up being that close to an actual suicide, it ups the chances that at some point in your life you will seriously consider ending your life. So, and which I did in 2010 at the height of the recession. Speaking business dropped off 80% overnight. We lost everything in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And that's when I learned what the barrel of my gun tasted like. Spoiler alert, I didn't pull the trigger. I told that story at a keynote back when we did them live, and a friend of mine was in the audience. He never heard me say that before about not pulling the trigger. And he came up afterwards. He goes, "Hey man, how come you didn't pull the trigger?" I go, "Hey man, could you try to sound a little less disappointed?" That's where the mental health comedy, because people always ask me, suicide prevention, depression, a comedian. Well, a couple things. One, the original comedian was a court jester. And the court jester's job was to speak truth to power on behalf of the powerless with humor. I believe I speak truth to the power of mental illness on behalf of those often powerless in its grip with humor. I believe with this humor, there's hope. Where there's laughter, there's life. Nobody dies laughing. And of course, I have a family history of depression, thoughts of suicide. So that's sort of triple qualified to speak on it. And I for years, I was just a comedian. I didn't have, any message of any kind.
Mm-hmm.
I always wanted one, but I could never figure out what I had to teach anybody. And then after coming so close and taking a look back at my family history, I thought, you know what? I could speak on suicide prevention. The trick was, from a business standpoint, I had to rebrand. And I had no idea how to convince people I could do something serious because, I've been doing comedy for 2 decades.
Yeah, you were 20 years on the Tonight Show. You worked with Jay Leno. Was that it?
Wrote jokes
man.
for 20 years for Jay. And that's how everybody knew me. And my wife said, "Do a TEDx." And I said, "What's a TEDx?" And just by chance that week, I got an email from TEDx that was in Vancouver, British Columbia, saying, "Do you want to apply?" Sure. So I sent in the application and I got it first time out. And I came out on stage at age 56, as depressed and suicidal. Nobody in my family, my wife, my friends, nobody knew that I was living with major depressive disorder and chronic suicidal ideation, which people with mental illness tend to hide it. And we're great actors. There's a reason I have a Screen Actors Guild card, because I'm a good actor. And people go, "Can you act?" Hey, look, I acted like I was happily married to my first wife for 5 years. What do you think?
But, yeah, and tell your story of where you auditioned and you showed your dark side.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Lord. A friend of mine is a photographer, and he took my headshot for comedy. And it's a big smile. I mean, a big smile. And he said, Frank, I have an art project. It's real film, a single lens reflex camera, natural light. I had a gray t-shirt, Calvin Klein t-shirt, and a blazer on like this. He goes, take the sport coat off and just leave the gray t-shirt on and look right into the camera and let something come through your eyes, come out your eyes, so that when people look at the photograph, they think, wow, there's something going on back there. So for the first time in my life, I decided to let the part of my personality that's been trying to kill me for decades shine through. He snapped the picture, and it's in my slide presentation. I mean, he nailed it. I put it up on the screen and go, this is the guy who's been trying to kill me for 40 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's scary.
Yeah, good looking, but
He's
scary.
Good looking, beautiful people, but Dexter quality for sure.
Yeah, and my dark passenger, as I say with apologies to Dexter, and it looks a lot like Mark Harmon's little brother, which is, but anyway, I got a call from my agent. I had an agent at the time in Portland. We live in Eugene, it's about a 2-hour drive. And the show Leverage was being produced in Portland. And they needed, I guess the part was for an assassin, a former CIA, MMA, kind of a Liam Neeson kind of a guy. And I'm the nicest guy on the planet, 148 pounds soaking wet. So I thought, there's no way I'm going to get this part unless I do like a Nicolas Cage audition. And from the time I leave my car till the time I get back to my car, I get into character of an assassin. And I'm going to do that by letting that part of my personality shine through. So I go in, I went to stop by Big Lots and bought some kind of badass looking military sunglasses, put a jean jacket on, a gray t-shirt, and I walk in and I kept the glasses on and I signed in. And then they call me in for the audition. And in an audition like that, the casting director reads one part and you read your part.
Mm-hmm.
And basically it was, they were playing the part of professor who wants to trade a file he has to the mob for his son, whom they've kidnapped. And so we did the scene. And then the casting, there were two women. One of the casting directors said, now take off your sunglasses and do it again. And I cocked my head to the right. I paused a second and I said, no. And they said, well, thanks very much. We'll be in touch. So I stayed in character all the way back to my car, broke character, phone rings, my agent. I go, hey man, to get the part. He goes, no, it's worse than that. How could it be worse than not getting the part? Well, I'm not sure exactly what you did, but they said you are no longer allowed in that building. I said, what?
It sounds like you nailed it.
Yeah, he said, you scared those two young women so bad, they say you cannot come back in the building. And I said, am I the only one who sees the irony in this? He goes, no, I understand. If you were Liam Neeson, it's an easy casting job. But a guy who's 148 pounds, nicest guy on the planet, goes in and scares the casting director so bad they ban you from the building. You should have gotten that part.
I agree.
And he said, if Quentin Tarantino had been booking that episode, you'd be working for him for the rest of your life, simply for the choices you made and the fact you stuck in character and didn't break character.
Right. How did you feel when you were that person?
Oh, I was murderous. I mean, because that's a part of my personality that's been trying to kill me, murder me for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just let that shine, and obviously, even with sunglasses on, it came screaming through whatever they felt when I said, and that's another thing. I said, well, what did I do or what did I say that made him, ban me from the building? He goes, that's the weird part. I said, what did he say that scared you so bad? And they said the word no. One word, and I scared them so bad they banned me from the building and I didn't get the part. Come on.
Oh boy. Well,
yes. So it was
no part, I guess.
Well, and I've taken acting classes. I took acting classes when I first moved to San Diego, a number of years worth. But I always wondered if I really could act. And I thought, well, son of a gun, I can. So
then what takes you to the next part? The next part where you're struggling with mental illness,
mm-hmm.
Wanting to kill yourself.
Yep.
If I don't do it, if I don't make it, if I go broke, well, I can always get in front of a train, whatever.
Yep.
And how did you turn that around? What's that? That's it. How did you turn it into a superpower?
That's my superpower.
Tell the audience what that means.
Well, because you think about this, it's like I was standing on a cliff and there's a brush fire coming up behind me. And down below 10 stories, let's say, is a beautiful deep lake. And so if I stand where I am, if I don't go anywhere, if I don't move, don't do anything different, I'm going to die. And that's the situation I was in. Now, if I jump, I can still die because, at 10 stories, you reach terminal velocity. But I could also land, well, and swim away. And so the fact that I was willing to, put it all on one roll of the dice, and if it didn't work out, kill myself. There are very few things on the planet more powerful than someone with absolutely nothing to lose. Because if I stayed put, I died. If I tried comedy and it worked great, if it didn't, I can still. And to this day, it's my superpower. Because I have chronic suicidal ideation, meaning I could pull the trigger anytime.
Right.
I can stand a great deal of pain knowing I've got an exit. So a lot of neuronormal people don't understand that the suicide. They say, why did he want to die? Chances are he or she did not want to die. They simply wanted to end the pain. So the fact that I can end the pain anytime I choose allows me to go on. The reason I didn't pull the trigger 10 years ago was because I had $1 million life insurance policy, but I'd only had it 22 months. And you have to have it 24 months for the suicide clause to lapse. So I was not going to leave my wife brokenhearted and broke. So I had to wait 2 months to kill myself. But because I knew I could do it on day 61, it was not that difficult to wait 2 months. And as luck would have it, by day 61, I don't even remember day 61. Things had gotten just, better enough that I don't remember that date. And, the bankruptcy gone through, the call stopped, and we were rebuilding our lives. And Jeffrey, just 2.5, 3 weeks ago, we had a brush fire here in our area, a wildfire.
Mm-hmm.
There's a 3-stage alert. 1 is get ready, 2 is get set, 3 is go. Level 3 is go. So I went downtown that morning, on the morning of June 8th, for a cardiology appointment for my annual checkup. And it was zone 1. It was level 1 when I left. Well, I'm there in the waiting room, and I look at my phone. There's an alert. It's level 3. I'm like, wait a minute. What happened to level 2? Get set.
Mm-hmm.
So we have 11 rescue cats, and they're in this house, and the fire's 1.25 miles away. And they issued the level 3, which is get out, don't look back, don't take anything, just get in your car and go, because wildfires move very quickly. So I'm driving 25 minutes back into level 3, back to a spot that's 1.25 miles from a wildfire, because we're like the Marine Corps when it comes to our animals. We don't leave anybody behind. I could not live with having left the cats there to die in a fire. So the cops going down the street, lights are flashing, horns are blowing, get out, get out, get out. And I'm coming in. I was the last one in the neighborhood. Smoke, it's getting darker outside because the smoke is getting thicker and thicker and thicker. And I'm stuffing cats in carriers. And a friend of mine said, well, you could have died. You drove back into a fire. You could have died. Look, I've been trying to kill myself for decades. He goes, well, you could have died in the fire. No, I have a handgun. If the fire is licking my toes, I'm not dying in a fire. I'm going to go ahead and just, and swallow the 38 and die that way. So, and I said, besides that, I mean, if you're going to die in a fire or going to die, I mean, if it should be doing something really special, spectacular. Well, Frank died in that fire. Why? Well, he was rescuing kitties. So.
The kitty lovers would find that phenomenal. And
I made a little video on the way out of the neighborhood. I said, look, the fire's 1.25 miles away. I got back to the house. I told everybody to go out of the neighborhood. Don't take anything. I couldn't do that. I got 11 cats, and I got choked up. I started crying a little bit. And I said, and I got them in the car. I said, we'd never leave anybody behind. And I said, we're not out of the neighborhood yet. I'm not clear yet. But, hopefully I'll be able to get past whatever and then get, the cats to safety. And it got 2,500 views, and people said, I watched that and I wept, you driving the kitties out of the neighborhood. So anyway, fortunately, the house didn't burn and the cats all survived, and so did I.
Obviously, unless you have an avatar. Sorry about this.
An amazing
avatar. Yeah, beautiful people. So where are you at now? I know that you're writing this book, and I didn't have the time to listen to it yet. Guts, Grit, and the Grind.
Yep.
A mental mechanics model. Manual.
Yeah, 2 women, psychologist Dr. Sally Spitzer Thomas and a therapist Sarah Gare. Sarah Gare teaches suicide prevention to first responders, mostly men. Sarah introduces herself like this. Hi, I'm Sarah Gare. I specialize in men. And so she wanted to buy a book on men's mental health that she could give to the occasional student that she thought could use it. So she went to Barnes & Noble, looked for a book on men's mental health, brick and mortar, couldn't find it. Went on Amazon and looked for a book on specifically on men's mental health. Couldn't find anything. So she thought, wow, there's a hole there's a vacuum.
Yeah.
So she got together with Dr. Sally Spitzer Thomas, who is way up the food chain in the suicide prevention business, lost her brother to suicide. And they contacted me. And they said, we're going to do this book. We're going to make it look like an automobile owner's manual. We want to know if you'll make it funny and if you'll add the automobile metaphors. And I said, wait a minute. You 2 ladies are writing a book on men's mental health. Don't you think you might need, I don't know, a man? They want a man. So I said, look, I'll do it if I can be a co-author and if I can voice the books for Audible. And they said, fine. So we've released two,
Mm-hmm.
the first two volumes.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Each one is sort of
bestsellers too on Amazon.
Yeah, bestsellers on Amazon.
Yeah.
Each one is 12 stories, 12 guys, kind of like Chicken Soup for the Tortured Man's Soul. and in each story, it's 500 words, things are good, 500 words, things go bad, 500 words, here's how I'm coping. Because we surveyed men to find out what kind of help they wanted in the way of a book. Mm-hmm. And they said, we want real stories of real men with real solutions, what the guys are actually doing to cope. So each book is 12 stories like that. Each guy has a different issue: alcoholism, drug addiction, bankruptcy, gambling, whatever it is. And so we're 2 books in. We got 2 books in, and 3 will come out this year, 4 probably early next year. And I had a ball voicing it. And if you go to my website, thementalhealthcomedian.com, and put in an email address, you can download the MP3 unabridged with me narrating it. Reading the fellow stories, and there's also exercises and resources and that kind of thing. Yeah, and I put in a post somewhere, I think on LinkedIn. You know, my senior high school English teacher would be amazed that Frank King wrote a bestseller. So
send her one.
I should send her one. Well, and the thing is, Jeffrey, when I wrote my senior term paper, I put a comma. I write to be read or spoken. So I put commas everywhere you're supposed to breathe, which apparently is not grammatically correct. So I got an F. She actually said to me, did you write this paper? I said, I did. Is that good? She goes, no, it's that bad. You're so well spoken, but this is awful. And of course, I had to go back and redo it and take out every unnecessary comma. Because I always write to be read out loud or to be spoken.
So that was definitely ingrained. That moment was imprinted in your brain. Why do you think that was? Because you talk about the she wanted you to take out your commas. You were a young man at the time, and you still remember that story.
Oh, because years later I realized, because I make my living in the beginning doing stand-up, being a funny speaker. Now I'm a speaker who's funny. And I realized at some point, years later, oh, you know, that's why I put all those commas in. Because I was writing something and I was putting commas or ellipses where I wanted the reader, or, you know, when you speak it, to take a breath. Because in comedy, in speaking, the pause is powerful. Right. And so I would put the commas in because I wanted you to pause, you know, for effect of some kind. And it's just the way my brain works. I guess some people just write to be spoken or write to be said out loud versus, you know, write to be read. And my comedy students, sometimes they'll write a joke and I say, look, it's a great joke, but it's not really a joke for the stage, because if it's in a book, they can read it. And if they don't quite understand, they go back and read it again. Mm-hmm. But if you're on stage and you deliver it and they don't get it, it's gone. So I'm very precise in my writing, especially comedy, that, you know, there's not a word in there that doesn't move the narrative forward. And by the way, I taught a class one time or several times called Stand Up for Mental Health. It's a comedy class for people with mental illness who want to write jokes and do stand up based on their mental illness. And they were the best group of students I have ever had, bar none. The stuff that came out of their mouths was ready for prime time. Didn't need any editing. And I don't know if it's because they spent so much time in self-reflection or they shine the light, you know, flashlight into the dark corners of their psyches. But I'll give you an example. Trish came in one day. I said, what you got for me, Trish? She goes, well, my boyfriend said he wants to break up with me. I said, why is that? He says he wants to see other people. What'd you say? I'm bipolar. Give me a minute. I know comics have been doing it 20 years. They can't write a joke that tight on the first go. Mm-hmm. So and by the way, I believe that my depression and thoughts of suicidality are simply the flip side of my creativity, imagination, and comic ability. I believe that mental illness is not just mental illness, it's mental illness and a mental illness. And I did a TedX talk on it called The Evolutionary Advantages of Mental Illness, Mental with Benefits.
Watch it. It's wonderful.
because I believe, because everybody I met who wasn't completely dysfunctional but had a mental illness had some kind of, again, superpower. I said that to my sister who has anxiety and depression. She goes, superpower? We're not the X-Men, we're the Xanax Men. Yep, that's my darling little sister, who, by the way, taught memoirs, short story, and poetry at Duke. That's her superpower.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my whole family is, everybody's on one psychotropic or another. More nuts in my family than in a 50-pound bag of squirrel food. And so, but all are talented in one way or another.
Let's hold on that for a second, because I watched one of your TED Talks and you said that you mentioned that you're not on psychotropics anymore. The only thing that you drink is coffee. Coffee is your superpower. It keeps you alert, awake, and keeps you moving. That way, because anybody that's been on a psychotropic, lithium, and there's so many of them.
Yep.
They bring you down below where you really should be if you have a mental illness. And I totally agree with you, just because I've been on some that make you feel just slow like a slug and you can't move around. And they're like, well, they're not doing the mania anymore. They're not doing the hypomania. You talk about hypomania is the superpower. If you look at these successful people, can you expand on that?
Yeah, Johnny Manziel, Johnny Football. Finally, he was the first freshman to win the Heisman. He got all kinds of awards, and then he also got in all kinds of trouble. And he was in the NFL for 2 years with the Cleveland Browns, washed out. And then he got diagnosed with living with bipolar. And I believe that he achieved all that in that magic state of hypomania. Between mania and manic and depressive, there's a hypomania where you're charismatic, energetic, don't need much sleep, take inspired risks, and when they pan out, people think it's genius. And what they tended to do in the past was they medicated people to just below the line, just at the very top of depressive. And I think if we could fine tune it so they could have them stay at the altitude in the hypomania without slipping into manic or back into depressive, that would be ideal. Because that's that super productive layer altitude but it's very difficult to regulate, to hold you there. So they tend to over medicate and bring you down just below the line of depressive to keep you from spiking. And the problem with depressive is the depressed state in bipolar is far more dangerous than simple depression, which is what I have. The suicide rate is higher for people in a depressive state of manic depressive. So it's very difficult to manage.
Describe how you feel when you're in that depressed mode. I know you have a very descriptive way of explaining it.
Yeah, because people always ask, what's it like? I said, well, and I show a picture of this old diving suit with the big bell metal, globe head, where they pumped air down to this. And because they're pumping air down there, you're very buoyant. So they have to fit you with lead-filled boots. And that's what depression is like for me. It's like I'm walking around, like somebody turned up the force of gravity. And I can feel it on the first day as I'm going down. It's like somebody's turning up the force of gravity. And it's harder and harder to put one foot in front of the other. And then I bottom out on the second day. And then on the third day, I begin to come back up. And it feels like they're turning gravity back down. And then at the end of the third day, I'm usually, and this recurs, depressive disorder cycles. It's like a flat spot on a wheel. Every so often you hit the flat spot.
Is it like a circadian rhythm that goes up and down, or is it triggered by certain events, or what seems to cause it?
Well, the major depressive disorder can be triggered, but for me, it's simply a cycle. And I've been most depressed, most wretchedly depressed, and most suicidal at some of the best times in my life. So it's definitely not situational for me. It's chemical, it's organic. What I worry about, Jeffrey, is with the pandemic, there are probably millions of people who are living with situational depression. And if they've never been depressed before, they may have no idea why they feel this way. You know, what is this? You know, they can't get out of bed in the morning. This has never happened to them before. And what I recommend is maybe a telemedicine appointment with a mental health professional to get diagnosed, evaluated, to see if it is in fact situational depression. And if it's situational, then medication may be indicated, not long term, not a life sentence on medication, but just enough to get you through the pandemic. I had a cousin who hit a bump like that, and she took an antidepressant for about 6 months and woke up one morning and thought, you know what, I'm done. And it never occurred again, but it was very situational for her.
Mm-hmm.
She lost her husband. She'd been caring for him for decades, and he'd passed away, and she was alone. And she realized it took her a little while to figure out what was going on. And that's what I worry about with people in the pandemic. It may take them a while to figure out. The upside of that is, if you have suffered situational depression in the pandemic, you may have a lot more respect and understanding of what I go through on a day in, day out basis.
Right. In your TED Talks at the time, it looked as if there's about a million people thinking about suicide. 39,000 people commit suicide. I didn't look at suicide rates now. It seems
it's worse.
Going up.
Yep. Last year, 47,000 people died by suicide, roughly 1 every 11 minutes in the U.S.
And it's going up in young people. When I was a kid,
second leading cause of death for young people age 14 to 25, I think. 3 college students a day, every day, before the pandemic died by suicide.
Wow.
So what they're worried specifically about this moment is there's been several studies. They think 40, 50, 60, 70,000 additional suicides this year because of the pandemic, and they call them deaths of despair.
Mm-hmm.
Because the moratorium on evictions and foreclosures is gone, so people can be evicted or foreclosed upon depending where they live. The $600 a week, federal unemployment benefit, which kept us going, is gone. And just today, the president said, no, we're not going to do a third stimulus until after the election. Well, thanks. So, I sure could have used that between now and then, but okay, it's your call. But yeah, so it's somebody said to me, what's your end game in this? What's your goal? My goal is no more suicides. I want to have a conversation where somebody goes, Frank, how come you're not speaking anymore? Well, people quit killing themselves. It's a lofty goal. It's probably not going to happen in my lifetime, but I'm doing the best I can.
I love it. I mean, that could be your legacy, man. I can keep going. Just the stories you tell when you're telling the jokes, which is obviously dark humor. Death is funny, not really, but it can be. But that's odd.
There's humor in it. I mean, when I speak, somebody said to me, does being a stand-up comedian hold you back from getting engagements to speak on suicide prevention? I said, no, you got it backwards. They'd much rather have me come in. I've got lived experience. I've educated myself on signs and symptoms, solutions for depression, thoughts, and suicide. And I can add that element of humor to make it far more digestible.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, everybody has kind of an idea what mental illness looks like and sounds like. And when they see me on stage, a comedian, relatively high functioning, successful in a lot of ways, it changes perceptions, which changes prejudices and reduces stigma.
Right.
And the impact of the TEDx talks, because they're on YouTube and all over the world, 24/7, 365. I got a Twitter DM from a young woman who I reached out to because she must have been a speaker or a coach or an author, and those are the people who generally want TED Talks. And she sent me a DM that said, I can't believe it's you. She said, I saw your TED Talk last fall at the lowest point in my life. And I watched it and I thought to myself, he's expressing out loud what I am feeling. I've just never been able to put it into words. She goes, and it gave me hope that, that maybe I could go on. Maybe I could survive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I mean, I choked up as I was reading her DM. She goes, thank you for telling your story, for going on stage and being so vulnerable. I really do believe it saved my life. I mean, that's that kind of impact.
That's amazing. It's an amazing story. It's a divine intervention. It's, you know, what people are talking about and science has proven the Higgs boson particle connects us all together. We're at different vibrations, and
Yeah.
you were there.
And I imagine, Jeffrey, there are probably a lot of people like that that I'll never know about. You know, that watched the TEDx talk and you know, heard me give voice to the way they were feeling. And when somebody said, one of the guys that I was in the Chamber of Commerce with, I was introduced as the mental health comedian, but I did a networking keynote, 15 minutes of a networking keynote. So he comes up afterwards, he goes, "What's the deal with the mental health comedian?" I said, "Well, that's really what I do. I speak on suicide prevention." And he goes, "Well, you know, my wife is a stay-at-home mom, depressed, on medication, but you know, she's isolated and it's not, you know, not working particularly well." I said, "Well, my advice would be you guys both together sit down and watch my first TEDx talk, because it will give you an idea. It will let her know, A, she's not alone, and B, it'll give you an idea of what's going through her mind." And so he said, when I saw him the next week, he goes, "Man, that was amazing. I'm watching her watching you." And when you got done, she said, I didn't think people spoke about depression out loud, much less in a TED talk that's on YouTube.
Yeah.
And so we invited her to join what I call my crazy coffee clutch, where 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us who live in town with mental illness get together, take our game faces off, and you know, just be ourselves for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And she joined the group, and she'd never told anybody outside her family that she lived with depression. And there she is at the coffee shop, and we're swapping stories, and you know, we could just be ourselves and not, you know, although occasionally there was somebody neuronormal sitting nearby that was horrified. But
The normies.
beg pardon?
The normies.
Yeah, because one of them heard somebody in our group say, "Yeah, they jumped off a 4-story building," and somebody else said, "4 stories? Oh man, that's not. You can walk away from that. Just really, you know, crippled. I'm going 10 stories at least." And you know, they have the what?
That's a
But
different,
yeah,
different kind of conversation for sure when you're going out
well,
for breakfast.
that's why peer support is so powerful. There's a story about peer support where this guy, he falls down a well and he can't get out because there aren't handholds. And so a family member comes by, sees him in the well, and says, "Man, that is awful. I wish there was some way I could help you," and walks on. A friend comes by, looks down, same story. "I wish I could help you, but there's no way I can get down there and get back up."
Mm-hmm.
And then a stranger walks by, looks down the well, and goes, "Oh," crawls over the lip of the well, drops to the bottom. And the guy in the well is like, "What are you doing?" He goes, I'm here to help you." He goes, "Help me? You're stuck in a well just like I am." He goes, "Yeah, but I've been here before. I know the way out."
Right.
That's the power of peer counseling, is having that context. I had a
Absolutely.
young woman at Lynchburg College come up to me after a show, 45-minute keynote. She goes, "Can I hug you?" Okay. It's the middle of the Me Too movement. Everybody in the room's got a video camera on their phone. I could just see the headline tomorrow: "Speaker gropes co-ed." So I gave her a very brotherly, push my pelvis back as far as I could hug.
Did you sniff her hair at least?
Yeah, I grabbed her butt. And I said, "Are you a hugger?" She goes, "No, I'm not a hugger." I go, "Well, what was with the hug?" She goes, "Well, been in therapy 2 years, and my therapist is good. I mean, she's got a great education. She's got the, you know, the degrees up on the wall. She knows her stuff, but she has absolutely no context for what I'm going through." She goes, "15 minutes into your little keynote, I'm thinking to myself, dear God, he's inside my head." She goes, "Your 45 minutes did more for me than 2 years with her." Again, it's that, you know,
That's
that
powerful.
context.
That's powerful. You know, that brings up a big subject about culture. We want to be accepted. We want to be loved. You know, even introverts want to be recognized. We want to help. As a human, the human spirit wants to reach out. And no matter how much stuff you have or how much, you know, Robert, you talk about Robert Downey Jr. He was an addict because he had mental issues. You know,
Yeah.
our my favorite comedian, Robin Williams. He finally hung himself. I was wondering when he's gonna. His last movie was telling. I mean, he had the darkness in that character. He was going to jump off that bridge and kill himself because he thought he was going to die of cancer. It was telling signs to people that can understand that feeling. And for you to be out there in the public takes a lot of kahunas. It takes a lot of balls, you know, because it's mental illness. You're a comedian. Comedians make fun of everything so they don't have to be sad, because the sadness is just so, like you said, lead boots sinking you to the bottom of the lake. And you've got this beautiful gift, and you, because of the suffrage that you go through, not only when you're younger, not only your family history, but on a daily basis. And it's so beautiful that you've turned it around to change other people's lives. How can we, as a human race, help decrease the stigma of mental illness? Because you in one of your TED Talks, and I can't go into it deep because we don't have much time left, but you talk about dyslexia and how you have a better peripheral view, and depressed people, you know, they can feel more, and there's all these things. It's your superpower. How can we spread this message more? How can we help you spread your message to help people with mental illness?
Well, and at the end of my talk on the evolutionary advantages of mental illness, mental with benefits, I say with about 3 minutes to go, well, Frank, that's all very interesting, but what are the action items? I mean, what are we supposed to do with this? I said, well, here's what you're going to do. You're going to make the IEP, individual education plan, truly individual. Not every 6-year-old belongs in first grade. Some 5-year-olds belong in first grade. Some 7-year-olds belong in first grade. So we need to, you know, it's kind of a factory system at this point.
Right.
So we make it individual. And if they have a disability, mental disability, what we should do is, I believe, is treat the disability and then wrap our arms around the ability, enhance, energize, and celebrate the ability. And I think that boils down to the curriculum and the teaching methods. If somebody has dyslexia, the advantages of dyslexia, they have better peripheral vision, and they have an amazing ability to pick out the anomaly in anything. The joke I wrote was, never play Where's Waldo for money with a dyslexic because you're going to lose. And it's right there. You didn't see that? But if the person is dyslexic, then the STEM program, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, is not for them. It's just words and numbers rolling around on a page. They need to be in arts and, you know, and humanities, and they're great at multi-level complex tasks. But putting them in a program where it's words and letters and numbers is so. However, if somebody has OCD, then the STEM program is ideal, because science, technology, engineering, mathematics, every one of those disciplines, every problem has one right answer, one. And so put them in STEM, and then steer that person with OCD to a career where they value precision and attention to detail, banking, engineering, architecture, where they pay good money for somebody who has that kind of focus.
Right.
I think that is the key. And then teaching methods. I had a friend who taught music, you know, musical instruments at a high school. And he said, my best students were invariably the ones with ADD and ADHD. The problem is they would improve as we're practicing for the first 10 minutes or so. And then the next 40 minutes of the, you know, the class didn't get any better. So he said, I just had this intuition that we should do things in 10-minute chunks. So I got an egg timer, and I would set the egg timer for 10 minutes and tell the kid, look, we're going to practice scales for 10 minutes. And when the egg timer goes off, we're going to do something different. Egg timer goes off. Now we're going to practice our breathing for 10 minutes. And that egg timer goes off. Now we're going to practice those 2 pieces you're doing at the concert this weekend, and then start over again. And he goes, it was amazing when I changed the teaching method, how fast they improved and how much they improved, because they They weren't forced to sit in a chair for 50 minutes and do the same thing, because after the 10-minute mark, a lot of their energy is just used to keep them in the chair.
Right.
They want to run from the room screaming. So that is what we can do, because if we can attach something positive to these conditions, OCD, bipolar, and so forth. My next TED Talk is called Depressive Realism. Maybe the glass really is half empty, because there is some science that people with depression see the world more accurately than those who are neuronormal, perhaps looking at it through rose-tinted glasses.
Right.
And the positive message at the end of it is we change depression from this disability to the ability to see the world more clearly. So that, I believe, is the key, is changing the frame.
Mm-hmm.
I told the audience, I don't believe I am broken. I believe, in fact, I was made this way.
Yeah, I agree with you. That was a wonderful talk. That was an hour that went by quickly. Einstein said, you know, the more brilliant you are, the less likely you are to be happy. And you list those brilliant people in your TED Talks with mental superpowers that have been called disabilities because the normies don't have it.
Yeah.
So I think you're right on target. And I want to tell you, I wore this tie. It's Looney Tunes.
Oh,
you're a comedian, so
and I'm
I
learning.
don't know if that's my new theme. You're my second guest. Mary Lee was my first. I wore a tie that was about love, but yours is Looney Tunes. It's going to be expensive to buy a new tie every time. But
yeah, well,
I enjoyed the talk. You're a brilliant man. You're doing great things. You're helping people. You help awakened. Mental illness is really more of a superpower. Why not change the paradigm? Why sit here and, you know, because a lot of these people with mental illness are the best actors, they're the best engineers, they're the best at whatever, because there's so much OCD. They're on it.
And Google is hiring people on the spectrum for their special abilities and paying them handsomely.
Oh, I bet. I'd like to have you on again. I could talk for another hour, but Frank, our time's up.
Oh,
It's been, I don't know if that was real or not. You know, I didn't pick up on that.
yeah. I appreciate the opportunity. I know you've just begun this. I'm glad to be one of your inaugural guests.
Absolutely. It's my honor. And thanks again, and we'll stay in touch.
Yes, and thank you for everything, Jeffrey.
My pleasure. Talk to you soon, Frank.
See ya.